Welcome to We Are One in Spirit podcast. Today I'm continuing my conversations of a different kind with my friend Brenda Williams. Today we're speaking about a topic of how to resolve inner conflict when you are in the midst of people who disagree with you, who maybe believe differently than you do. Today's a very wonderful healing episode, and I think that you will enjoy it and gain from it some new skills, some new tools to be able to help you find that inner peace that we're all seeking.
Last week, the one about who are we and who are they,
right,
and what's causing us to do that. And then the next thing that, what's been in the field ever since then is this word, compartmentalize. Well, I got a 7-hour lecture last night.
What?
Oh God, yeah, man, I'm telling you, I was out most of the night. It was all wrapped around the Tri-Vector, our sense of separation, our sense of taking our past experiences, whether they're of this time or another time, and compartmentalizing them, which creates inner conflict within ourselves. So I've got about 3/4 of the blog finished. So before if we decide to release any of this, don't release it until we might want to chat again, and I'll pull that in because it's still real fresh and real new for me.
Okay, that's a good idea, because what I've got to talk about is kind of volatile as well.
Yeah, so maybe if we just kind of take a perspective back from it.
Yeah, I almost started to call you yesterday and said, can we talk before we talk?
Sure, I know. Well, that was my thought this morning when I woke up. In fact, I started to call you, and then it was like, no, we'll just muddle through and do. I said, but it doesn't feel like this is something we post out right away. So it feels like we're coming from two, because there is science behind this thing, and it's like, whoa, yeah. But it was very broad, and it said, here's a clue that perhaps will give some perspective on why we are having so much difficulty blending all of this stuff into a holistic now moment piece that allows the now moment to be what the now moment is, and not with all the baggage around it. Does that?
Yeah, because we are dragging a lot of baggage around. We have past lives, we have parallel lives, we have what happened yesterday, what happened 20 years ago, what we're dealing with now, where we're going, all the unrest in the world. Yeah, there's a lot going on for me, for you, for all of us that are processing these sudden changes.
Yeah, I agree. So anyway, that's kind of where my world got to. So throw it out there.
Okay. Well, let me back up a little bit to 2017. After we had moved to Sweet Home, I ended up taking a break from everything. And I went to a church camp. It was a Seventh-day Adventist, and they really, really helped me. I went back into the church, where I was most wounded, and allowed them to help me heal. And it was a precious experience. They cooked meals for me. They taught me how to eat vegan, cook vegan food. It's a different lifestyle. And just ministered to me. There was group therapy. There was medical help. They covered the whole human in that. Now, they still had their doctrine, and that was a little unnerving for me. But be that what it was, I really gained and gleaned a lot from that. So afterwards, I thought, maybe I want to get back in church. And I think my ex and I went to a church up in Sango, which was just between Clarksville and Ashland City. We visited there, didn't feel like that was the place for us, didn't go back. Thought, okay, well, that was a hunch. I followed through, nothing happened. So that evidently was not the right church. And I kept feeling like there was another church that I would be involved in, but the timing wasn't right. You know how you get these things ahead of time and you feel them brewing, and it's like, it hadn't quite perked yet, so don't pour your cup. don't stick your cup under there. It's not ready yet. So,
Watery.
huh?
Too watery.
Yeah, too watery. Wasn't ready.
Watery.
Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe they weren't ready for me. Maybe I wasn't ready for what I felt was being called through me. Well, since I've moved here, I have had a real strong urge to go and visit a church. There's two in particular that I feel somewhat of a resonance. As I drive through town, it's like, I'm getting a vibe there. There's something, and that's how I kind of get led anyway, as I feel into it.
Yeah.
Well, I felt into it and thought, I'm going to go to that church one of these days. Well, my neighbor next door, we had been, just chatting in the yard when we were cutting grass or something like that. Nothing deep conversation. Well, Jill and I started walking together through my new woods and just around in our neighborhood. So we kind of got to know each other, and she invited me to go to her church with her. And I thought, ooh, am I ready for this? Is this the time? So again, I felt into it, and it's like, yeah, I have to go. It's right. I don't know what to expect, but I know I need to show up. So I did. I went with them. I walked. They invited me to ride with them, but I was hearing very strongly, feet on the ground, walk all the way there. They invited me to drive back with them. No, I have to walk home. I have to like ground this, anchor it on the ground. And so I walked back, and while I was there, I felt the Holy Spirit moving. It was beautiful. The service, the worship, the energy, the people, they were giving testimony about miracles God's doing in their life. And oh, I just love that kind of stuff. I was fine. The preacher was saying a few things that were, I'm doing the bridge the gap kind of thing, where it's like, okay, is that just another term he's using? How can I bridge that and make it applicable to me? Am I still just not feeling the resonance? Okay, what do I need to do with that? So I was working the whole time. A lot of light language. I didn't know any of the songs they were singing, that was fine, because what I did was took the opportunity to just hum and sing in light language. They have a really nice loud band with drums and all that kind of stuff. Whoa, yeah, I'm into that too. So I'm enjoying myself, enjoying the spirit, enjoying the fellowship and what have you. Then they're going to pass around the communion. Okay, I start having this real strong, that pushing thing you're talking about, where something's just not gelling with me. And I'm like, okay, I know that we have been in a time where our president has uncovered and brought forth a lot of satanic practices within the government, the banking system, here, there, who's involved and all that, and that's kind of ruckus stirred up. So within me, I began to look at, okay, sacrifice, blood sacrifice, human sacrifice, animal what is this? Why to me, it was just so appalling and out of my awareness that I couldn't even believe it. At first, I could not even believe that people would do such a thing, that they could be so depraved in their consciousness and so shut off from God that they could do such a thing as that. So I sat with that for a little while before ever going to church. So when that time came to pass the blood of Christ, the body of Christ that we're going to ingest, we're going to drink the blood in some kind of a symbology of Christ's sacrifice for our sins. And I'm like, okay, that's separation. First of all, we're not separated from God. We are part of God. So that didn't gel with me. And I was just having this, I won't call it turmoil, but yet just an unrest inside. So when the plate came by, I just said, and, just politely declined. And afterwards, I was, I was really on guard. And I don't mean to be that way, but there was a self-protective measure that I felt like I don't want to go back to where I've come out of. And I want to be open yet to what God is showing me here and now. Things don't have to be like they were. I'm seeing that a lot of things were still as they were when I left the church 20 years ago. But I'm willing to give it a try again, because I feel like there's still so much value in coming together in unity like that and bringing a resonant field for everyone to be in. Will I go back? I think I will. I don't think I'm going to be taking of communion, because to me that's the same thing as honoring death, blood, dying, torture. Why are we not celebrating the victory, the resurrection, our oneness with God, how our connection with God is so easy now? Where's that? That's the missing link. And the thing that's blocking us from realizing that missing link is this other piece that has been infiltrated. I went out and did a little research on Constantine and how that the Bible, the canon of the Bible, was put together. And I sent you the video on that, I believe, the one how satanic practices got in the church. And when I watched that, I felt something just release within me, like the Holy Spirit was groaning through me, and tears came. And I was like, I have to share this with Brenda. I don't know how to approach it, and I'll just have to go intuitively, service by service, step by step. I can't have a pre-programmed plan of how I'm going to respond to that. I've really got to stay in the moment and look for opportunities to speak my truth, regardless of whether it's accepted. Part of me fears losing my friendship with my neighbors. I really enjoy them. I really want to stay in fellowship with them. But if I speak my truth, this peace is the foundation of Christianity. The suffering of Christ, the passion of Christ, all of it, that's the foundational piece. And if I go in there like a bull in a china shop and try to tell them, oh, this is all wrong, they're not going to trust me. They're going to look at me as being the demon and being the satanic force. So yeah, I'm in a predicament, Brenda. You got any words for me?
Well, actually, I do.
I hope you would.
I spent 7 hours upstairs in a conversation about the very same thing with a solution.
What?
Yeah. It was interesting because what the conversation was about was looking at why we still take issue because in the beginning at the table with the disciples, it was not about, satanic ritual. It was not. It was a very beautiful gift saying, this is part of me, and here you will have this every time you take this now moment. Remember me. Well, that's pretty difficult to do considering the fact that it was 2,000 years ago, A. B, there's about 9,422,614 versions of what that means. How do we bridge that? How does that come into a framework? So what I said earlier, that part of this last night was looking at all of the stories that we have in our own experience, conscious or subconscious. What are they? And the word that's been coming to me ever since I did that last blog about who are we and who are they and why do we still compartmentalize our version of our reality. So what my meeting, quote unquote, was about was explore that word and let's look at what's really going on. So 2 things for me came out. A quote that I've used for a good long while about the rational brain, and this is Bessel van der Kolk. He was working with PTSD in a psychiatric department in University of North Carolina, and actually I've got it on 3 or 4 different blogs I've done. I quote him a lot. In fact, I'm working on 2 pieces now about which brain are we feeding. But the short version of that is that the rational brain is basically impotent to talk the emotional brain out of its reality. So what does that mean? It just means we either rationalize, but it's coming in conflict with what we've been told and taught.
Okay.
So our smart intelligence can't talk this emotional limbic system, but where does that come from? What we've been told, shown, taught is where that comes from. So then I started to look at, okay, what have we done? We've started to compartmentalize. What does that mean? And I'll read this little piece. Compartmentalization is a subconscious defense mechanism used to avoid cognitive dissonance. That just means anxiety between what you know, and what you think. Belief systems, emotions. We have conflicting values. Remember, always with RBQT, it's in the 18 inches, it's the inner conflict between what we know and what we have been shown, taught. So it's looking at what does compartmentalizing mean. So a lot of that is, I'm still back again into looking at, if we are saying we are separate, and that's where you went right away, my separation from God. It isn't a separation. No. It is a coping mechanism that the human being has developed to navigate the inner conflict between what they know in their original blueprint understanding and what they are being given to deal with as a human being. The more we embody our humanity, the more this conflict is going to come up. But we still see it as what we've been told. We're separating ourselves. If you go into communion, not as what the baggage is, but understanding from the beginning, it was a gift at that table of the 12. It was a gift. To say, I am always with you. I am both physically and blood is the blood of life in the beginning. That is how we get life. Without the blood, we have no life. So here I am with you, my physical form, the wafer, my in the beginning life force, the blood. Well, you know, if you take a step back and look at all the things that we have distorted and compromised, and what are we being asked to do? It's always been, I go back to the beginning. In the beginning, promised the promises and the agreements that we made to trust the beginning, to not get caught up in what's going on here. And the more physical we become, because that's our task, is to come into full physical resonance with our divine intelligence, the embodiment. But we're still trying to make sense out of it and trying to figure out where we are. Well, that's a broad thing that we can't do. We can, you know, if we can't think Einstein, we can't think our way through this and out of this mess we've made. We can't. So a lot of what's going into what I was given as this next piece that goes up as a follow-up to the one that I did, who are we and who are they? Now it's saying, here's how that works. Is it possible that we can go, I'll use the word back to, but that's not correct, but go back to our original understanding of divine intelligence? Or are we going to continue to use the screwed up words and language that means something totally different, to continually have to use this coping mechanism of compartmentalization
and separation? Coping mechanism, separation. I haven't seen it like that.
Yeah, and they're two different words, because separation means you're cut off. There's no way back.
And that's not true.
When you divorce, you are cut off. You are cut off. You no longer hold that bond. And yet that doesn't mean you do not have
fellowship,
a relationship.
Right.
It doesn't. So even the word itself, even divorce itself, is saying, no, you've got it wrong. You've got it wrong. You're not separate. You have made a new choice to embody yourself in another way. And the two together is conflict. So you are separating yourself from the conflict, the inner
Yes.
conflict, not
Okay.
the outer conflict, but that's what we see. Okay, I'm gonna move away from you because I can't get along with you anymore.
Uh-huh.
And we see that as separation. It isn't. Separation is separating ourselves and continuing to have relationship, but the inner conflict, we're separating from the inner conflict that we have compartmentalized as a coping mechanism. If I only think about this when I'm in this situation, I'm only going to think about this when I'm in this situation. So our entire human existence is compartmentalized. And that was the thing when I started getting this word, I kept thinking, because I keep noticing things and I would recognize, oh, just something as simple as not going to a gathering. And immediately I'm going, oh, yeah. Today, compartmentalize. I don't think I'm up to this today because I'm tired, I'm cold, my head is full of this, and I really want to pull in all, because see, I bridge between the physics of it. It's physics. The physiology of it, oh my gosh, that you talk about how it impacts the physical system. And guess what? There's even a syndrome called compartmentalization. You know what it does? It stops the blood flow. It's like cellulitis, where the blood flow doesn't come and it creates a hard place. It can be acute, it can happen occasionally, or it can be a chronic thing. It's about the blood flow. What does that tell you? The life force can't. So all of the bridges that are in this particular piece fits right into why the Tri-Vector is so important, because it allows that movement. It allows the cells in the body, the body systems itself, to begin to not be caught up in the inner conflict of our mental compartmentalization. Compartment, mentalization. So you start to go back. So my sense this morning was, no, I want to stay on this. Okay, well, Yvonne and I are going to get hiney hole deep in it today, but we came at it from two different directions. Not only to make it a real situation, but then to say, here's a solution that's in process.
Okay.
It isn't quite yet put together. But what I think it's saying is that you now have a different perspective
for
the way you process and move into things, because you were looking at it from the baggage and from what you've been hearing that is now revealed that a lot of us didn't even have a relationship with. It's like, whoa, surely I can't even go there. Well, if we can recognize it, that means in all probability at some course in our human existence, we have had a relationship with it. Either we've been the victim or the victimizer, because you have to have a relationship before you can have an opinion of it. And neither one of them are relative. It doesn't matter which one you are. It just means, can I stop now that inner conflict?
Yes, that's what I want. It doesn't matter really what other people believe and practice. I want the peace in myself that I can stand in their midst, whole and in my own vibration and my connection with Source and my love for humanity, and appreciate this moment with these precious people.
Instead of continuing to pass judgment or feel conflict, in conflict and outer conflict, the pushing in because it's like, whoa, the pushing out because, whoa. So either way, so what this did for me when this word came up a week or so ago, about the time I was doing that other blog, was how do we make peace with this? Everybody's wanting to make peace. Well, you can't think your way into peace. you have to understand where the conflict is coming from. And right now, for most of us, it's coming not only from the outside, what we see and hear and experience, but also from the inner conflict pushing out, because it doesn't. Where do we go with this? Where do we go with this without separating from our humanness? We aren't permitted to do that. Because we are being invited to live in our humanity, in our human form, and find resolution to these things that are separating us, because we're compartmentalizing how we deal with it.
So the answer and my desire is to have peace within myself. And I'm just going to have to keep putting myself in that situation to be uncomfortable so that I can resolve it. I think that's why I'm supposed to go back.
Yeah, and I think this is where we begin to bridge between our judgment of people who are, our judgment of our diversity.
Yeah, and diversity is beautiful.
It is the only way through this.
Yeah.
It is our strength. But our strength, when I use that phrase, our strength is in our diversity, a deeper meaning of that for me today is our diversity, that we can sit at the table with one another, have a beautiful experience ourselves, because they're obviously having a beautiful experience, or maybe not. But maybe this is a dialogue that's next on the table, saying, what are you just participating in because you're supposed to, or it's required? And what are you participating in because you see the depth of its relationship with your own inner knowing, or that it's like, wait a minute, this is way outside, and I'm at peace with people having their own experience, but I don't have to participate in it. I do not have to sit in that group, because I won't make a difference. I won't make a difference there. Holding my resonance will not make a difference in certain arenas. And so it's like choosing how we expend our wisdom, how we expend our energy, and who's in the water with us. And remember, a long time ago, we had a conversation about, our circles are getting smaller. Our core circles are getting smaller. One of the pieces that I moved out with myself after I spent some time with this morning was that that's okay now. Because in order for us to utilize the wisdom that some of us, what people call first wavers, or pick a word, we've done our piece. We are now putting everything on the table. And what we're seeing slowly is that the next circle, moving in closer, we're finding that resonance with them. We're finding how to build the bridges. And now we can move in that arena differently. And I think that's part of what was happening, my version of your reality, part of what was happening going into the church. You had to bump that wall, but you had to first see yourself before you could determine, is there a way that I can make a difference by going back? Don't have to say, this is my version and this is your version. That's not the issue.
And do I need to make a difference in their lives? No, this is about me and my connection with spirit, and me having fellowship with others in a peaceful way, that our diversity in beliefs can share common ground and not cause dissension.
Absolutely. And sometimes that means that we don't have to share. And I think as I'm saying this, what I'm realizing is that these blogs are similar to the ones that I put up for years. It's like showing two sides of the same coin, but in the meantime, it's finding my piece within that mix. We are them, us are them. And it was like, the blog continued to go on to say, but this is your piece. This is your piece, to find your piece.
I like what you said about the coin. Let me emphasize that, because I'm thinking heads or tails. And we think heads is different than tails, but if you pick up the coin, it's both. And it has its value because it has both sides of the coin. If a coin
Awesome
didn't have,
analogy.
if the coin didn't have tails, it would not be 25 cents. The quarter wouldn't be 25 cents. If it had tails and didn't have heads, its value is destroyed.
We wouldn't know what it we wouldn't know what it was
Yeah.
because we understood that the coin has heads and tails. See, all the examples, that's a beautiful example and analogy to use, and that's prime. It's like looking at how do we now really take those moments, step back before we feel obligated and responsible to show somebody the way next, because that's not our job to make our way one way and theirs. We're still compartmentalizing is adaptability. We adapt to the circumstances. So there are certain circumstances that we know to keep our mouth shut. There are certain circumstances that we feel responsible and obligated to push and to knock on heads and say, can you hear me? And we find that neither one of those really work completely, because they're two sides, they're two extremes. What happens if we recognize how we function? Because I realized I was compartmentalizing so many things in the last 2 days. I was adapting to circumstances rather than holding my truth without a push in or a push out.
Yeah.
That's what standing in your truth means. There's nothing that anyone can do can push in and disturb you, and there's no push out because you're recognizing that you're standing in your truth, but you don't have to say a word.
Yeah. And
That's
that brings the inner
skill.
peace. That resolves the inner conflict.
That resolves the inner conflict. It's when we try to figure it out, then we immediately step into adaptability. Because if your belief and my belief are different, then there are only two choices. I can either adapt and figure out a way that we can come together, and there we go again.
That triangle.
Distraction or closing that triangle. I can hold my inner peace and still move around the world doing what it does, because I can't change it. I can
change the world.
Yeah, what was that first thing that you learned when you start to do woo-woo is let it begin with me. Well, that's still true today, but boy, is it ever grown in its definition of what that means. Let it begin with me. Can I participate? Because my inner truth goes immediately to sitting at the table with the 12 and hearing, and then recognizing, oh, it's not about satanic ritual there, because the body is the wafer, life force is the blood. It has a whole different meaning. So when I hear about all this crap that they're, showing right now, I feel, wow. I don't feel understanding. Because I don't understand why anyone would go to that depth. But I can also understand from the next step in on that, the conditioning of their beliefs, the control of their beliefs, the manipulation of their beliefs. How do they ever reach their humanity again? Maybe they can, and maybe they can't. But it's an arena that is, I am grateful for its exposure, because it has precipitated this conversation.
And many like this.
Which provides a pathway that says, whose reality do you want to adapt to? Can you, in your inner 18 inches, in your core, can you see communion with a heart beating peacefully? And that was my question to me as you were telling. And it was like, every time you would talk about it, I would go back into that 18 inches, and there was no push out and there was no push. You weren't pushing in, you were sharing an experience. I wasn't pushing out because I held my memory of the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that we're
Wow.
learning new skill sets. We're
Yes, we are.
learning new skill sets and new languaging around the old skill sets. This is nothing more than RBQT 18 inches.
Mm-hmm.
We are allowing the diversity to close the circle.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got a physiological resonance, a physiological guide to show us when it actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, we make a big deal out of it. Do you see how
It's really not a big deal.
How long have we been talking?
37. Yeah.
Yeah, give or take. Hey,
we come into a whole new place in 37 minutes.
In
Yeah.
37 minutes.
I love
and
that.
it was, hey, I can't talk about this today because I got to write the blog. And you're saying, oh, I got to let go of some of this today. Well, I think we've kind of done a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Now we go and do our personal work around what we have learned.
And that's the whole point of sharing this. I mean, you and I could have this conversation over the phone and nobody else would be the wiser. But I feel like our vulnerability and our exposure of our true thoughts, our reality, and sharing that, because I think it's something we all deal with. I mean, it's a human thing that we are always, you know, I think it comes a lot of times from our wounding in childhood. We begin to be conditioned and we put up those walls and we distance ourselves from people who hurt us because we don't know how to cope with it. We don't have those skill sets as a child. We're not taught them. We don't have them as adults many times. So I think that's the value in us sharing this publicly and just, you know, letting it fall where it may. There'll be people who may have opposition.
That's a surprise. That's a sort of a surprise to me. Is it a surprise to you? I mean, not really, but sort of, kind of. You know, I wouldn't, when we first started talking, I'm going, oh boy, this is gonna, you know.
Yeah, like I don't know if we're gonna put this out there publicly or not, because I don't know where we're going. We never do. I know what's on my heart and what I have to release, but I don't know where it's going to end up.
To see the simplicity of being willing to, one of the things with the Earth Project had to do with, you know, and this is my woo-woo side, you know, when we were out in the closed-in room with the technicians from the multiverse, very diverse. Most of them were not at all happy to be in the room, particularly with me, because I'm, you know, not one of them. And the other part was that a lot of them didn't like one another very much either.
When was this?
Yeah, really. And it would be, you know, sitting back and going, but it would almost be like what it felt like was this lockdown. It was like being in this space that there was definitely no door to get out of. And being reminded that until we came to consensus, until we found a way to maximize the diversity of our experience and our opinions and find a solution for humanity to be able to deal in the same way with its diversity and its judgments and its, you know, unwillingness and the whole 9 yards. We just sit there, and sometimes I'd be so tired the next day because it felt like I had just been in a battle all night long. And I'm sure you've had those experiences too. We all have, who, you know, we work hard. We work hard in these places. And it was like, it gradually got to be a place where we began to respect. We began to see the value in our diversity, and it brought solutions faster. Brought solutions faster, just like today. Is it done? Is there more? Oh, there's a lot more. I can feel now a lot of the blog coming more into focus because of our conversation. How do we now take this, not just the visual, because I think the visual is powerful, and I'm in agreement. Let's throw it out there. What you know, I don't have I don't have a sense at all that if we can't have the hard discussions, the difficult discussions, then we're not doing our job.
We're not
And
really
that's
making
always,
progress. Yeah.
that's all of what Conversations of a Different Kind was based on. That was something that was brought into my journal in the early 90s. That phrase, you will always be engaged in conversations of a different kind, because it is going in, it's diving deep, it's flowing wide, and it's looking at what people don't want to talk about. And even as we started this, we both had some apprehension.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel it now, do you?
No, no, no. Because other people, if they don't agree or they don't take away any benefit from this, they can click off and have their own opinion. They may leave nasty comments. That's okay too. That's just another opportunity for me to go in and say, okay, I can accept their opinion and still stand in my truth.
Absolutely. And I think that that's where we are with what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just another example that I feel very strongly that we're on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're on the right track.
And maybe this
Wow.
will be a blessing and a benefit to others to just be able to step back and going, where's my inner conflict? Where am I not in resonance with myself? And how can I bridge the gap within me before even speaking about it to anyone else? So, a lot of different
Well,
paths we can take.
that's what we're called to do. That's where you eliminate judgment. But
Yeah.
again, behavior patterns, and I think one of the strong relationships with the Tri-Vector system is it is completely about understanding your own behavior patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get distracted, or when now you compartmentalize. So this is an additional piece that brings, I think, a strength to taking those moments to self-monitor your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And do you leave the table, or do you stay at the table until there's resolution with yourself? Doesn't matter if there's resolution with anybody else, because you're only, you can only manage half of that.
Well, if you think about Jesus sitting at that dinner table on the night before his crucifixion, there were 12 people there. Do you think they all had the same opinion and all believed the same thing? No, there was a great amount of diversity and different levels of doubt and belief and personal conflict.
And misunderstanding and the whole 9 yards.
Oh, absolutely.
And then who had, and the stories, remember their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you were personally there. And I think a lot of us in some vibrational field, the reason we have such an opinion is that there is that vibrational recognition and memory of that. Was I there? No, probably not. I don't know. Don't feel like it, but we still have access to that vibrational field, because that's what the beginning holds. It holds everything.
Mm-hmm.
Can we remember that beginning? Can we remember these things that we find we can't, we have judgment around? Can we take a moment and say, what would it have been like? What would I have been feeling based on what I'm experiencing today? If I were sitting at that table, what would I feel? Or what would I think?
Or even say, because this was the night also that Mary Magdalene, or Mary, washed the feet of Jesus with that very expensive perfume. Yes. And that caused dissension. It's like, why is she wasting so much money on, and they didn't understand. Jesus offered a different perspective and say, she's anointing me for my burial, for my death, to help me pass through the realms into the everlasting realms. She's preparing me. So would I, at that night, have been Mary Magdalene, weeping and anointing the feet of Jesus, or would I be the disciples that were standing in judgment?
And isn't that true with every circumstance and event that we experience? So why are we not willing to pause before we spout out what we think we have to say? Are we making excuses? Are we justifying? Are we separating? Are we compartmentalizing just so we don't seem like we can't be with these people because I have another opinion? we're all human beings, and we all are living on this big blue-green ball in the middle of nowhere. And this is where we've been asked to come and to do our part. And it's like, this is one of those deep conversations again, that branches out far and wide into a lot of different belief systems and a lot of different judgments. But yet each time a little block or a little bump comes in, our vocabulary is now moving to another side of that. And then feeling inside the peacefulness in the middle.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for the experience. It's really brought me to a place of understanding myself better. I mean, that self-discovery is part of this process, and I'm thankful.
Well said. Well said.
I'm thankful for discovering this part of myself, because what I've been praying for in my personal prayers is unconditional love, to be the embodiment of unconditional fifth element love, and no judgment. No judgment can exist in that. And so what does Spirit do? Go to church. Let's see how this walks out.
Let's see what you walk, you talk. Let's see what you need to step right. Oh, don't you take that word sometimes? Sometimes it's like, don't make me talk about that. But yeah, I think we're more today than a year ago. Even the call to do that, to be in that integrity. Monitor your behavior, not in judgment, in growth, because if you're aware of your compartmentalizing, it makes it a lot easier, because just like that quote, I can't think my way. The rational mind has no ability to override the strength of this emotion, because it's in that survival part of our brain, that limbic system, that primitive brain that says, let me put my shoulders up. I'm ready to run from the dinosaurs. I'm ready to run from people who don't believe the way I do, because it makes me uncomfortable. Why? Yeah. Why does it make you uncomfortable? And what are you going to do with that discomfort? Yeah. So today I had my experience of dealing with some discomfort. How about you? Oh, yeah. Because it was like, okay, we're not sure if we're going to put this out. Yeah, well, we put on our big girl panties and we're just going to go with it. I'm in. I'm in. I'm just going to go with it and let the Holy Spirit bless everyone who listens. And thank you, Brenda. This has been so inspirational and comforting. Appreciate you. You have a good day. You too. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.